One of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, and the only non-American that hasn't just won the iconic Mr. Olympia competition once, but he's done it 6 times in a row. After closing the chapter on his bodybuilding career, he now puts priority on spending time with his family, his sports nutrition company, and inspiring people around the world. So for a lesson in how to create a legacy, please join me in welcoming Mr. Dorian Yates to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Welcome, Dorian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, mate.
Thank you for also, coming down here and giving me your time. I appreciate it.
No problem, mate. No problem. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but yeah, I've been filming a documentary with Generation Iron, so a lot of time on that. So pretty busy at the moment. I'm off to Kurdistan tomorrow,
right,
to do an appearance for the nutrition company. So busy days.
What are you doing out there then?
Well, I got my nutrition company, DY Nutrition, and we got distribution in Iraq and Kurdistan.
Right.
So I'm going out there to do promotions, which is interesting because I didn't honestly really know where Kurdistan was on the map until they invited me. So it's northern Iraq, just below Turkey apparently. So I'm going to be going out there and doing promotions, meeting the governor, I think, and so on. So. It's somewhere I haven't been before, so I look forward to that.
It's a different life from what you started from, I guess.
Absolutely different. I grew up in Birmingham, and I think the people around me where I came from, like their imagination of what's possible was not that great. And actually it was one of the things that I always wanted to do. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but it was to experience and travel around the world. So I ended up through my sport, through bodybuilding, like going all around the world to do promotions, appearances, seminars, and so on. So I achieved that goal through the sport in the end.
Yeah. So, because we were talking off camera, there's some similarities. I was an aspiring junior bodybuilder, nowhere near to your level, but I guess one of the things that I didn't have at the time that you seemed to have at an early age was the drive and the determination to kind of take it so far. What do you think gave you that, based on, because there wasn't people around you that had probably done anything like that, were there?
I think it's somewhat genetic. Your personality, your basic personality is probably somewhat genetic, and then it's also influenced by your environment. So I lost my father when I was quite young. And then we moved to Birmingham just with my mum, and she married a new guy, and he also died quite quickly. So it was pretty tragic time. Yeah. And then my mum decided to leave Birmingham when I was 16, and I decided to stay. So I didn't have anywhere to stay. I was just staying at friends' houses and stuff like that. And being a teenager with my mates, we got into a bit of trouble. And at 18 years old, I was sent to a detention centre for a few months. And I'd already done a little bit of weights before when I was at school. And I'd done karate, and I'd done all the push-ups and squats in my room. I had a ball worker and all this. So I was already interested in that and physical. And when I was in this detention centre, part of the process is hard physical exercise, which a lot of the kids didn't like. But I loved it, and it was something for me to outlet being in this place, to kind of escape for a while. And I was good at it. I was good at the circuit training. I was beating everybody on that. And then we had weight training, but it was more like powerlifting. So we just concentrate on bench press, squat, and deadlift. And again, there was a couple of lads that were probably bigger and heavier than me, but I was as strong as them, and I already had what you could term as a physique-looking body. I had good abdominals, I had a good shape. So the foundation of a good physique was there. And even the prison officers noticed that, and they encouraged me when you get out of here, go and do powerlifting because you could be a good powerlifter. But I already knew that I wasn't interested in powerlifting. I was interested in bodybuilding because I've already seen the magazines from Joe Weider, and I was familiar with some of the bodybuilders. So I was like, that's the route I want to go. So as an individual, I think I was already much more determined and tunnel vision than the average person. And then I had all this adversity around me and no real future. I had no family around me, no qualifications from school, nobody you know, there to advise or help. So my prospects were not that great, and I saw bodybuilding as a way to improve those prospects, if you like, and do something positive. And where exactly that was leading, when I started, I didn't know. But I knew I'm doing this and I'm going to give it 100% and something's going to be good from it. And maybe, I'd really like to be like British champion one day.
Really?
I think that's probably as far as I was thinking at that point, anyway.
Right, that was as far as your imagination.
Yeah, at that point could go, because that's what I'd gone to watch a British Championship and I saw the guys and like, they were great, but maybe in a few years I can do that. And of course the story turned out differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard that you originally, when you was with your father, you was sort of like in the countryside living, and then you came into like a council estate. Was that quite, thinking back, was that quite a shock to go from a change of life?
Well, it was. I went from what we call a small holding in England, which is not really a farm, but it's just, you got fields, you got stables. We had some horses there, dogs, chickens, ducks. This kind of thing. It was kind of an idyllic upbringing for a kid. I had all this space. And my friends live, 1 mile this way or 1 mile this way and so on. So you got to ride your bike or you got to walk everywhere. So it's a good, healthy lifestyle. And then when my father passed away, we moved to Birmingham. It wasn't actually a council estate, it was okay. Yeah. It was after 16, when my mum left. I was lived in quite a few places, lived with friends on a council estate, lived in bedsit. And eventually, when I came from the detention centre, and I didn't have anywhere to stay, the city housed me, council, as we say in England. So they gave me a council flat on a very notorious council estate in Birmingham at the time called Castle Vale. And they offered me this place because not many people accept it and go there. But for me, it was fine. So yeah, that's where I was living for probably 5 years when I started training. Right. So I was still living there. I remember getting to the point where I was British champion. I was British champion. I won the British Championship at Wembley. But I still came home to Castle Vale, to this council flat that had no carpet. I didn't have a proper bed. I had a mattress and an old TV. And I came back with my trophy and I put it on the top of this old TV. And I'm thinking, great, I'm British champion, but there's no newspapers outside. There's no TV. I haven't got a car. I got no money. But, I wasn't thinking this in a bad way. All my friends had cars and more material things, but I was happy because I had this goal that was all consuming and I was pursuing it and doing well at it. And I kind of knew that things were going to come, but at that point, British champion, but still broke. Right. So I distinctly remember that.
What were you like, what would your mates have said you were like as a teenager? Were you sort of fairly, because I've looked at some of your videos and you almost look a little bit shy. Was that?
Yeah, I was not comfortable, I was shy. I was even thinking like, wow, getting on the stage in front of all these people, how's it going to be? But that was okay actually. When I got on stage, it felt like natural, it felt like it was my home. So, but talking to people, a lot of people that I didn't know and were not from my background, I was uncomfortable with, and definitely talking on camera, very uncomfortable because I'd never been exposed to that. Even having my picture taken, it took me probably until after I retired from bodybuilding to be able to just smile for the camera. I couldn't smile. I was like, just take the picture, man. I can't smile unless I'm feeling like smiling. And right now I'm not feeling like smiling. So that was even Joe Weider tried to get me to smile. In the end, he's like, look, just let this guy do what he wants because that's what he's going to do. In the end, they just accepted me, and that's pretty much the story. I do pretty much do things the way I want to do them.
Yeah.
Shy kid, but already mentally much stronger than everyone around me, I believe. I stood out, and a few people that grew up with me when we were teenagers, they're like, it wasn't really a surprise for us that you did that, It was in a way, but it wasn't, because you always something different about you, always like more focused and determined. That was the young Dorian, and over all this experience, I've grown massively. I mean, you learn to be comfortable talking to different people. You learn to be comfortable talking on stage on a microphone, and I can go and speak now with 2,000-3,000 people. It's not a problem, but I was, initially I was terrified. I remember doing my first seminar when I think I was a British champion or just before, and I was super nervous. And I prepared. I had all these notes and these cues and everything like that. And I did the job. But now, if I do a seminar, I could be sleeping 5 minutes earlier and just get up and do it. It's second nature for me. And to talk to people and to talk on camera is not a big deal. So my personality grew massively from all this exposure and traveling and life experiences. You just get more confident.
Yeah. And do you think that's what it is, confidence? Because I spoke to Frank Zane actually. We did a podcast with him, and he mentioned that a lot of bodybuilders kind of it becomes a shield that they carry with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's very difficult to let go of that and see what's inside. Is that similar?
Absolutely, it wasn't a problem for me. Like people say, "Oh, don't you miss those days when you're huge? And how do you feel like you're not as big and everything?" Now I'm like, no, I don't miss it at all. And for me, it was not. As I said, I was in a detention centre when I was a teenager, and I had no problem with anybody because they could see I was stronger and bigger and tougher than average. So I didn't start bodybuilding from the point of view of I feel insecure.
Right.
So I'm going to build myself up, and then I'll feel more secure, and I'll feel better, and everyone will treat me differently. I did it as a pursuit, as a sport, and as a way to improve my life. And I almost viewed the physique, the body that I was building, as not being me. It was almost like a project, a sculpture, something that was separate from me. And it needs to be like this, and it needs to be as massive as possible, as ripped as possible, and balanced. And that's the criteria, and that's what I need to present. Now, I'm no longer competing. Why do I need this massive sculpture now? I need my body now for functioning. I need to live inside this thing. I need to do things. And when you're at that massive body weight, it's not that functional.
No.
It's, it's difficult to tie your shoelaces, let alone do yoga and, cycling up mountains and swimming and things that I enjoy doing now. So now I've got the body that I need for the life that I lead now. I need a functional body, a healthy, fit body that's going to give me a quality of life, and that's what I train for now. And I'm very proud of what I did in the past, and it's there. I did it, and I did it to the maximum, and nobody could do it anymore. So that chapter is now closed.
Yeah.
And if anyone's interested in bodybuilding and competing and training, then I will say there's nobody better. Nobody with more knowledge in that area than me, and that's why I now give to other people that want to do it, but that training is not relevant for me now.
No. When with the sort of bodybuilding as a sport, it's slightly different to business in some ways. I'm trying to sort of compare them together, but when I started bodybuilding, I had a belief that I could have been. I could have been to certainly as a junior, I believed I had potential. But with bodybuilding, I've heard you say, it's all about genetics. And, if you've not got the right genetics, you're wasting your time to compete. What was the point that you realised that you had the potential that you could make this something that was going to change your life as opposed to just, doing local competitions and things?
Well, fortunately, very, very quickly, I got that feedback. Just to correct this statement, I think is not all about genetics.
Right.
But if you haven't got the genetics to reach this potential, you won't.
Right.
But you could have the genetics to be Mr. Olympia, but the other input is not correct.
Okay.
Maybe you're not that dedicated, and you're missing some of the other factors. I believe some people I competed against, perhaps they had as good as or better genetics than me. But they didn't beat me because I had more input. I made the most of my genetics, so I maximized where maybe they didn't. So, yeah, you can't be Mr. Olympia and without the correct genetics, and genetics are very important. But just because you have the best genetics doesn't mean that you will be number one, because somebody else could just be smarter and work harder and make up that difference.
Was there anyone you ever knew that probably had some really good genetics that, you know, if they'd have applied themselves like you, could have, you know, around that time may have been able to beat you, do you think?
Well, I did make a statement at the time about Flex Wheeler because he was second to me in '93. And it was great, amazing potential. Not different physique to me in that he was very light, like his bone structure was very light, but very full, round muscle bellies that looked great. Well, just because I knew Flex not very well, but we were friendly and I knew him and I knew enough about him to know that he was not 100% all the time, whereas I was. So if he had been 100%, if he had done everything that I did, well, maybe a different outcome, but that wasn't the case, right?
No.
So potential is one thing, but maximizing it's another.
And would you say that carries across in all areas of life and business that, you know?
Absolutely. It's like you're starting with some basic material of potential, and it's what you do with that's important. So if you've got great genetics, you might have a head start on somebody, but they might catch you up. If you're missing days, you're breaking your diet, you're not training quite as hard as you could do, you know, or you're letting life factors interfere. That's what I was very good at. I just totally shut off from everything. And like, if my house is on fire, like to call the fire brigade, what can I do about it? I'm still going to the gym. It's like that was literally it. I lived in a tunnel, which was pretty extreme, but trying to be the best in the world is pretty extreme, so you need extreme measures.
Before you started your, you know, I guess, accelerating your bodybuilding career, did you, and I've watched a lot of the anger that you put in, it seems anger or aggression in it. Did you have anger as a sort of a young teenager that you were carrying with you?
Well, now I realise absolutely, yes, I did. You know, my father died when I was young. Nobody really seemed to like help me with that. So I guess I was pissed off about that. And then my mum left and I was left in Birmingham on my own. Maybe I was pissed off about that. And just being a teenager, you're pissed off anyway. So, so yeah, I had this that I could call on. Anger and like determination to like show everybody. That was a lot of it. I'll fucking show you. Yeah, I'll use that energy. I'm going to show you what I can do. So that, I always, until I was Mr. Olympia, and it's something I struggled with a little bit initially, I always had this underdog thing. Like I'm the underdog and nobody like thinks I can do it, so I'm going to fucking show you, I'm going to do it. So I use that, I call it fuck you energy, you know? I use some fuck you energy in the workout. So there's a combination of there of anger and determination and like wanting to show the world that, you know, I'm worth something, I guess.
Yeah. And I guess that's in a positive way, because I suppose, you know, as a teenager, you can easily put that fuck you energy into fucking other people up.
Well, a lot of people do that. That's what happens. And that was kind of the phase I was in a little bit.
Really?
When I was a teenager, you know, I was a skinhead. All my mates were skinheads or punks, and that was the environment I was in. So it's quite often a few little fisticuffs and so on going on there. You've got a bunch of angry kids. And this is early 80s. I don't know if you remember, early 80s in Britain was not a great time. There's a lot of unemployment, you know, there's not much for people to do. So drinking and fighting was kind of like a British pastime, really.
Yeah, do you think for younger people, you know, like I suppose we're talking to a lot of people that are in the fitness industry, you know, how important is it, do you think, to try and sort of channel young kids that may be from that area into some kind of sport or fitness or bodybuilding?
I think it's great. You just put you got all this excess energy, and you're putting it into something positive now, instead of putting it into something negative. It's just energy. So I think sports are a great way to channel that. Yeah. And you know, they say sports is like sanitized warfare, almost anyway. So it's taking the place of that and letting that, giving a good outlet for that energy, a positive outlet.
Yeah. I certainly see that. We've interviewed some people from all different areas, and you know, it seems as though if you've not got something to focus your mind, and even now I'm sort of, how old am I? 48. If the times where I've not got something to occupy myself, I then start looking for, not trouble, but...
You're looking for stimulus. Your brain's looking for stimulus, and it might be the wrong not a good, positive outcome for you, the stimulus. That's what it is, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when, in terms of your focus when you were competing then, how did you do that? You know, were you sort of, you had this vision of British Championships, and did you write things down? Did you have a kind of a wall of, like posters of people you wanted to follow? How did you get that control? Because I guess you didn't have someone to tell you.
I think, and I tell people all the time, whatever it is, your training, business, even relationship, anything, write things down. If you've got a goal or a promise to yourself, write it down on a piece of paper and sign it. Like, I intend to stop smoking, and I'm going to stop today, and write your name, and it's there, right? So I did that with bodybuilding. I had break it down into, first of all, I got every workout that I ever did from 1983 to 1997 logged down.
Really?
Every exercise, every rep, every weight, everything is written down. So every workout I used to write it down, and then I would write down short-term goals, which usually were a month.
Okay.
Long-term goals were 12 months, which is usually, with me at some point, was ending with a contest, right? So I'd write down a few things like body weight, a few key exercises like bench and squat and deadlift and curls, whatever, write them down. This is what I'm doing now. This is a goal for next month. And reasonable, achievable goals. Like, if you're going to put something ridiculous that you can't achieve, then it's not going to help you. It's just going to demotivate you. So little goals, little steps. But all the journeys that we make are made of little steps. So let's say that you want to climb this mountain, Mount Everest. If you can see the top, you probably can't see it, but let's say you can see the top. It's just so far away, it's daunting, right? So why don't you concentrate? Yeah, I will get to the top one day, but first of all, I will get to that ledge there. And when I get to that ledge there, I will get to that ledge there. And let me focus on that. So breaking it down into little achievable goals. So it might have been, I don't know, let's go back, and I was bench pressing 200 pounds for 8 reps. My goal for next month might be 210 pounds for 8 reps, or 205. It don't seem a lot. But if you added 5 pounds every month to your bench press for a month, it would be 60 pounds at the end of the year. So that would be a big increase.
Yeah.
And of course, diminishing returns, the bigger and stronger you get and the more advanced, the smaller those goals, the gains are going to be.
Right.
So I think it's important to have a long-term goal and break that into small, achievable steps to get there. So you got the big one, but you're focused on the little ones that are keeping you focused. If you just focus on the big one, you'll get daunted and you'll get distracted. So break it down into little steps.
How often did you used to look at your short and long-term goals when you was
Well, I used to
competing?
sit down, like I used to take 10 or 15 minutes before I went to the gym, to drive to the gym. I'll sit down in my house, a quiet place, and I'd get out my log and I'd look what I did last week. And I'd look at the goals and look what I did last week. That's what I did last week. So I did 200 pounds on the bench press for 8 reps. Today I must do 9. That's my goal. It's solid, it's there, it's in my head, and I go into the gym. I know what I'm doing. I know what my goal is. Most people wander into the gym. Oh, I'm doing chest today. I'll do a bit of chest then. With no real goals in mind, you're not going to get very far doing that. I got this observation I make with people in the gym. So when you start training, it's a stimulus that you're not used to. So you will react, yeah? Well, pretty soon your body will get used to that level of stimulus, and that's when you've got to really push it, and you've got to have a plan. And most people don't have that. So you see them progress for the first year, maybe 18 months, and that's pretty much it. They don't really move after that. They're just going to the gym, spinning the wheels, because they haven't got this structure in place. They haven't got the goals. If you haven't got the goals, you're not going to push yourself. It's to push yourself to real failure, which is what I recommend that people do for a limited amount of sets. Short, hard workouts. It's fucking uncomfortable. It's going to hurt. You're going to be out of breath. You're going to feel nauseous. Most people that train with me first time, they vomit. It's that extreme. So why are you going to do that to yourself? Why are you going to push through that? Because you've got a goal that's very important. Otherwise, when you get uncomfortable, your normal reaction is to fuck this, I'm stopping. You need the goal to push you through that pain. So my goal is greater than the temporary discomfort that I'm going to experience.
Right.
And I know that. So I'm going to go through that discomfort because I want the goal greater than I want to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It's basically like that.
Was there, when you were thinking about those things, like your motivation, was it a motivation to get away from where you were at the moment, or was it like a motivation on where you were going to?
It was a motivation purely on the physical, on the training, on the body, on the outcome.
Right.
The rest would fall into place.
Right.
That's what I was thinking, you know. And you're asking me how long did it take for me to realize that I got what it takes. I had been training for 18 months. 18 months I've been training, prepared for my first contest, which was a novice contest, West Coast Championships in Morecambe. I think you're on the other coast, right, when you were competing in the juniors. So West Coast in Morecambe, novice contest. I remember going there and pumping up backstage, and I'm thinking, there's a couple of good lads here, right? I reckon I might be better than them, though. That was it, yeah? I went on stage, I posed, I came off, and everyone was just freaking out. I had Ron Davis there, who was the head of the IFBB in England, and he judged at the Mr. Olympia. And him and some other judges was just freaked, like, where do you come from? I'm like, I come from Birmingham. Why are you in the novice class? I'm like, because I'm a novice, I haven't competed before, and I don't think I'm good enough for the heavyweights. They're literally almost laughing. Not good enough for the heavyweights, eh? Well, let me tell you something, kid. You're better than all the heavyweights we've got in the country right now. You're the best heavyweight we've got, mate. I'm like, I couldn't really take it in at first. So he said, look, in 2 weeks' time, or a week's time, I think it was a week's time, there's the World Games in London, which is, World Games is like Olympic Games, but the sports are not yet accepted into the Olympic Games. So they had bodybuilding there, and this was a world championship level. So if you won this, you turn pro.
Right.
And they said, we want you to come to some trials in a couple of days, because we're going to choose the team for the British team to go to the World Games. I'm like, is this really happening? Are they serious? So I went to the trials for the World Games, and I got selected. So one weekend I'm in a novice contest. The next weekend I'm in a World Championship and competing against Berridon May, who you're probably familiar with. He won the contest. Matt Mendenhall was second. So that was the standard.
I used to watch them look at them in Flex magazine when I was there.
So there were 13 guys in the World Championship heavyweight class, and I was 7th place. And I'd just been in my first novice contest. So, and you know, I had these people that could be, you know, there weren't some guys at the gym blowing smoke up my ass.
No,
this
right.
guy has been and judged the Mr. Olympia. He sat me down, and he had a gym in Birmingham at the one time. He sat me down and he went through a list of pros, and he's like, you're better than this guy. You're better than this guy now. I think I was still not really believing him, but
right.
you know, I was like, no, I need to be much bigger. But the goods were there. People could see it.
Yeah.
I didn't really have much weak points. I had good leg structure, which most of the heavyweights didn't have at that time. I mean, I can look back now at my early photos and blatantly see like amazing potential there, but I didn't really know at the time.
No. Did anything switch in your mind, like after that? Was it like after that conversation or something where you suddenly realised that your life was probably going to be a bit different?
Yeah, I did. I met Wag Bennett, who Wag and Diane Bennett, they were running the federation at the time, or involved. And they're quite well known because they're the ones that they brought Arnold over. When he used to compete in the NAB universe in London, right. He moved to, before he went to California with Joe Weider, he was in London living and training with the Bennetts. Right. So they knew Arnold as well, and they were, you know, they were talking to me as well. So it was great that I got all this feedback early on that what I'm doing and what I'm dedicating myself to is really worthwhile. So let's get on with it and do more.
Yeah, and you just made you made that decision then, and I guess you never turned back.
Yeah, and then I won the British Championship the following year, and then because I was British champion, I had somebody that was willing to back me in opening the gym, and that's when I opened the Temple Gym, which was my training base eventually for all the Mr. Olympias.
Right.
And very different from the American gym environment. It was it was a basement, down some stairs into a dark basement with no windows and no cardio. It was just iron, you know.
Was it the clanky sort of cast iron dumbbells?
Yeah, you know, you'd hear the iron rattling down there. People were scared to go down there because it had a reputation, which was not totally justified. It was quite friendly once you got to know us. But I catch people all the time at the top of the stairs looking down because you couldn't actually see anything down there. It was just like you're going into a black hole. And you could hear rock music, people screaming, weights banging, and a lot of people are intimidated just to step down the stairs. Like, come on, no one's going to eat you down there.
So you were sort of running the gym and working out in it at the same time?
Yeah, I opened the gym and I was running that in '87. Well, that's when we opened. So then that was giving me a decent income that I could, you know, really focus on this without any financial stresses. Managed to buy myself a car, all that stuff. So
is it right that you didn't have your first car until you was 26?
Yeah, 25. Because when I opened the gym and started making a decent salary, I took my driving lessons and got a car, Ford Cortina.
Ford Cortina?
£600. Ford Cortina, that was my first car.
I had a Capri.
Yeah, classic.
Cortina. And at 26, wow.
Yeah,
so
all my friends had cars from 18, 19, 20. But as I said, I really didn't feel like I was missing out because I think internally I knew, like, something's coming and this is, don't worry about this. So I had that confidence, especially after the 85 when I got all this feedback.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm thinking about being possibility of being Mr. Olympia, but it was very, very remote at that point. I didn't want to push my vision too far and be unrealistic. So I was like, I want to get to be pro at that point. I think I can be a good pro. So my future's looking better than it was a couple of years ago.
And with that, like, I know you read a lot about it in business and setting goals and anything that you want in life. You've obviously gone up to be the best in the world at a sport, which very few people ever get in their life, at being the best at something in the world. What would be your advice then if somebody does want to achieve any kind of goal? Like, how far should you look? Because they say set big, audacious goals and that. You obviously, your big goal would have been to be Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
What sort of, how did you go through that in your mind? And as you got into it, did you set bigger and bigger goals, or what? Tell us.
I always worked on like a yearly basis.
Right.
So this is my year.
Okay.
And then I break the year down into months, so little segments throughout the year. But what I'd like to say about whether this is a sport, or it's a business, or it's a relationship, or whatever it is in your life, in your human experience, what you're going to receive back is what you focus on. So if all your focus is going into your business, it will be successful. If all your focus is going into picking up hot women in bars, eventually it will be successful. Because it's all you're thinking about, it's all you're projecting out there, yeah? It will come back to you eventually. So you've got to be very careful what you're thinking about and what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And most people are not even aware of what their thoughts are. They're just running around in their head and they've got no control over them. So that's why I'm a big believer in meditation now. I didn't meditate when I was bodybuilding, but I did goal set. I did visualize. I mean, all day I was visualizing. It's all I was thinking about, literally all day. I remember having dreams. I'd be dreaming about my leg workout the night before I did my leg workout. So I've always done it twice. I did it in my dream, and then I'd sit down in my office and do it in my head as well. So I've already done that before I go to the gym. It's like mental rehearsal. It's already programmed into me. So I went to the gym with absolute goals. I knew which exercise I was doing, in which order, how much weight I put on the bar, how many reps I was trying to get. I would even have certain shirts that I would only wear on certain days and certain pants I would wear on leg days. All little rituals and things like this, that all my energy was going into that. So you get what you focus on. And if you focus on, well, I'm broke and my girl just left me and I'm shit, you're going to keep getting more of that.
Right.
So you've got to be very careful what you're thinking and what you're focusing on.
And I've been reading about that recently, and because sometimes I think people think they're thinking about what they want, but when you sort of write down your day and say how much time you actually spent on it, you're probably spending more time on like what you don't want, but you think you want something. And do you think that's the case then? Like, because you sound as though you're obsessively just thinking about it and nothing else was coming in your mind. Did you ever doubt yourself and think, oh, you know, do you think I'm going to win this competition? Or was it just not
Honestly,
even?
Never. There were some uncertain times when I didn't know what the outcome would be. My first pro show, because I'm going from being an amateur champion to professional ranks, and that's a big leap. We all know guys that were good British champions or German champions or American champions or whatever, and they looked outstanding in that field. Then they went to the next rank, and it's quite a big jump up, and they got lost. So my first pro contest, I was uncertain, and I'd never been on stage with any of these guys before, so I didn't know what the outcome would be. But actually, I gave myself an ultimatum, really. I said, considering the way I'm doing this and the amount of sacrifices I'm making, and I had a wife and a kid as well, so they're losing focus and time with me and all these things. And let's be honest, professional bodybuilding, you're taking steroids, which might not be that great for your health. So all these factors have to be justified. And I had seen a lot of people sacrificing their family, sacrifice their marriage, the job, to do bodybuilding, but yet they were not getting anything out of it. So I don't want to be that guy. So, and I'm aware of the history of bodybuilding and who's successful in bodybuilding. They got what it takes. You can see when they go to pro, they're up there, They might not win straight away, but they're up there. So I said, okay, if I've got what it takes to be a good pro and compete in the Mr. Olympia, maybe. If I don't place in the top 5 in this contest, let's be honest, I haven't got what it takes. Let's be honest, So if I don't place in the top 5, I will not be continuing as a competitive bodybuilder. I've already got one little gym that's giving me a nice salary. I could open more gyms, and there were not a lot of gyms around in the 80s. It was new, right? So gyms were making money. Now the gym business is not that great because you've got these big corporations, £15 a month, and it's hard for people to make money in a gym. So like, I'll still bodybuild, I'm still doing it, but I won't do it to this extent, and I won't be taking the steroids and everything, because I'll just do it for myself now. Maybe I'll open some more gyms, something vague in the background, but I was hoping that was not going to happen, but the option had to be there. So I went to Night of Champions in New York and got a pretty close second there on my first contest. And it was not the guy that won, Mohammed Benaziza, he won. It wasn't him that flew out to California to do the photo shoots, it was me. Because I had a look or something that maybe was more interesting or more marketable, I don't know. But anyway, I got flown out to California, and it's every bodybuilder's dream at that point to go to Venice Beach, go to Gold's Gym, get your picture in Flex magazine. Obviously there was no internet or anything then, so the magazine was God. If you got in the magazine, then you've made it. 1990, first contest, and flew out to California. And then after that was Night of Champions again, which I won. And then first Mr. Olympia again, a little bit of uncertainty. Lee Haney was already 7 times Mr. Olympia winner, and I was going up against him. And he was Mr. Olympia when I started. So I was aware that I had to change my mindset as far as my attitude towards Lee Haney. He's not like a god now, He's a man with 2 arms and 2 legs, and he lifts weights. And at this point, my confidence was building, because I knew what I'd been putting in and how hard I was training. I started to observe that nobody else was really doing it, not to this extent. I thought they were, but they weren't. So I know that I'm training harder than him. I know I'm putting in more. So why not? So I went to compete in my first Mr. Olympia, and again I got a close second on my first Mr. Olympia, and then the next year I won it. So those 2 contests were uncertain because they were new ground. So I didn't go into those thinking, I'm definitely going to win. But I went in the first one probably more tentative and not really knowing.
Yeah.
The second one I was going to try and beat Lee Haney. Whether I was going to do it or not is another thing, but I definitely think I've got a chance, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to go for it. And it turned out to be a close second, and then after that, not wanting to sound arrogant, because I don't think I was, but I was fully confident every year that I would win.
Right.
There was not even an iota of doubt.
So in order to take a couple of lessons from that, there's a couple of things that stood out for me. One is, it sounded as though you had this honesty with yourself, because I guess a lot of people get caught up in the dream, even whether it's business, and it's like, I'm going to do this, and it's like, well, you've got to almost bring yourself back down to life. How are you going to do it is the question.
Yeah. It's good to, people say to me, oh, I want to be a multimillionaire. Great. How? How are you going to do that? Where's your route to that destination? Right. Show me. Yeah. Well, you don't really know, do you? So it's not going to happen. Yeah. It's just a vague goal, but tell me how you're going to get there. It's like a physical destination. If you wanted to go from here to Madrid, you'd need a route. You'd need a map, wouldn't you? Otherwise, you just go on the road and start wandering, and you'd never get there. No. So you need a plan, you need a route, and it needs to be doable to get there.
Yeah, that's right. And I accept there's some things that you wouldn't believe are possible, but it's certainly in the bodybuilding field, and maybe in certain sports, there's going to be certain physical limitations.
Yeah, listen, it doesn't matter how positive I am about it, I will never be a 7 foot tall basketball player. Yeah. Because it's not in my code. So there are limitations to what you can do physically, with your body and everything. But it's probably more flexible than people maybe think.
Yeah. And I think that's a key point, is just being, that honesty to say, like, I'm going to set myself, because, in business and sport, you are going to sacrifice everything, I guess. And it's just knowing when to be smart, which you obviously did make that decision with yourself and make that agreement with yourself. And then once you've done that, it's like, right, now I know I can go on.
Yeah, and then your confidence builds on itself.
Yeah. And then what about when you went into those negative situations, the 2 times, the first Mr. Olympia and the second at the, what was the competition called?
The first Night of Champions was unknown, and the first Mr. Olympia was not unknown, because I knew I was competing against, but it was still another level that I hadn't been to. So it was a little unknown, it wasn't negative. The more very negative situations that I had to overcome were injuries that I had. I had a bicep tear in 1994, 6 weeks before the contest, which really, I believe anyone else would have dropped out. And I did think about it for a couple of days. Like, I was totally devastated. It happened. I'd won 92, I'd won in 93, and in 93 just raised the bar so high that people couldn't believe it. So now this guy is going to be really, really hard for anyone to beat in the foreseeable future. Yeah. So that was what was ahead of me, and now, bang, I've got an injury that, this is definitely possibly a career-ending injury. It's not a little injury, it's a big tear. And 6 weeks before the contest. So I was just, for a day, I was devastated and like, I'm going to have to drop out, there's no way I can do this. And then the positivists start to take over and say, well, how do you know that? How do you know you can't do it until you try? So you've got a handicap. And you can work with that, you can work around it. And let's say a week out from Mr. Olympia, if it's just things haven't worked out and you look so terrible that you don't want to compete, then drop out then, mate. Don't do it now. Let's see what we can do. So there was a lot of exercises I couldn't do. I had to have a lot of therapy on the injury to try and get the swelling down and everything like that. So it was definitely less than ideal going into that contest, which I managed to win. And the same, or not the same, but a very similar thing happened in 1997. I had 2 big injuries in my career, and they were both coming into a contest because I just pushed myself too much going into a contest. My problem was never needed anyone to tell me to push harder, or I needed somebody actually to say, hey, like, bring it down a little bit. So I was still training with the same intensity and trying to still kind of lift the same weights, getting ready for a contest as I was doing in the off season. And of course, getting ready for a contest, you're lowering your calorie level, you're losing body fat, you're probably slightly dehydrated, you're more exhausted, you're not sleeping properly, you're doing more cardio. All these things became too much stress, and now I know in hindsight, that's why I got injured. So I advise people now that I coach for contests to like change the training going into a contest. So twice I had to deal with a very, and the second injury was career ending.
Right.
It was 3 weeks before the Mr. Olympia, tricep tendon tear on the left elbow here, and literally now I couldn't train. Nothing, no weight training for 3 weeks. And it was the same thing, like, you can't compete, you're going to have to drop out.
Did people tell you couldn't compete?
Well, the thing was, I didn't tell anybody.
Right.
My wife knew, obviously, my training partner at the gym, and 2 friends of mine that I trusted. They're the only ones that I told. Because I didn't want it to become public knowledge, because then when I went on stage, people would be really looking for it.
Yeah.
So if they don't know about it, it's better. And there was no internet then. It would be impossible to keep this a secret now. If I'd injured myself in a gym and somebody heard, and it'll be on the internet within 2 minutes, right? But then you could kind of keep things under wraps. So I didn't even tell anybody going into the contest. All I did for that contest last 3 weeks was cardio. Right. No weight training, which is not, for a bodybuilder, that's very strange.
Yeah.
And won that contest as well.
You won?
I wasn't at my best because of all these factors going in. I don't believe I was at my best, but I won the contest. So the 2 injuries getting ready for a contest were probably the biggest hurdles I had to overcome in the whole of my training career.
And what was your mindset going into that final Olympia then? Were you just adamant that, because it must have been, like, I suppose even in bodybuilding, having your arms swelled up, I understood that they was, had to syringe some blood out.
I had a friend that was a physio, so we had, it's like a big balloon device that goes over your arm, and it inflates and deflates, so it's constantly pumping all the time to try to move that fluid out of the injury. I had that on for like a couple of days, like sitting in the room, and then the night before the contest, he came to my room and it was still kind of swollen around the elbow, so he put a syringe in there and just pulled out a lot of blood and fluid, so it was less visible. It was still a bit black and blue actually, and I tried to cover it with a tan, but you can see very, very slightly. I went into that contest in a state that I'd never been before. Vulnerable, feeling weak and vulnerable, not even being able to practice my posing because I was scared to like pose too hard. I didn't know the extent of the injury till I went to the States, because funnily enough in England we had MRI machines, but they were like a tunnel.
Right.
In New York they have an open one, and I was so big I couldn't even fit my shoulders into this MRI in England. So we went to New York and they said basically you got like a 95% detachment of the tendon, so it's hanging on by a little bit, so you better be very careful. So even posing I was nervous, and I didn't carry that energy that I normally had, of like invincibility, of power, of energy. That a couple of people have said, I think Chris Cormier that used to compete against me, a flex wheeler, they said they could feel almost like a force field around me. The energy was so high. And that's their words. But that's how I felt, and going to 97, I didn't feel like that at all. I couldn't train. I was worried about, even on stage, further damaging this or something like that. So not my usual confidence and level going into that at all. It was very hard for me to focus.
And after that then, was that essentially your bodybuilding career over?
Well, I didn't know if it was or it wasn't. I had surgery after this, after the contest, to reattach the tendon, and it was successful in that it reattached. But the surgeon told me the tendon was very badly torn, and some of the muscle was torn as well. So not only was it functionally weak, it looked a little different as well. But I was hoping for the best outcome, and I was thinking, actually going into 97, before the injury, I was thinking, it's getting to be a job now. I was losing that passion, that drive, and not surprising in the way I applied myself and like missed out on everything else in life because of this goal. So I was feeling like I'm going to need a change soon. I'm not sure how long I want to do this. But after the injury and not being at my best, I thought if I have the surgery and everything's great, I would like to do one more, because I'd almost like to redeem myself and go out on, on a better note. But after the surgery and a couple of months, rehab, and then I'll start training, it was pretty obvious to me that there was a big strength imbalance now between the left and right side, which made it impossible to train the way I wanted to train and train for Mr. Olympia. So that was it. My decision was made, and now this was traumatic because this was a decision out of my hands.
Yeah.
I would have liked to, I strategized and planned everything through my career, every contest, everything, and people tried to sway me this way and that way and the other, and they always wanted me to compete in the Arnold Classic contests, which is a big show and good prize money, but I knew that was in the middle of the year and it threw me off of the Mr. Olympia, which was always my goal, to be Mr. Olympia. So everything I planned and strategized and did myself, and now it's like, boom, you're finished, and you can't control the situation, and that was very difficult for me.
What must have that been like mentally, like having so much focus on where you're going, to be told it's over and you can't do anything about it?
Devastating. I mean, I went into a really deep depression, to be honest, and it wasn't just the retirement, forced retirement from bodybuilding. There was other factors in my life that were going on, but they all seemed to happen at the same time. I almost didn't know who I was. No. Like without this all-encompassing goal, it's gone. And what am I going to do now? Really, what am I going to do, and who am I? And it took some time to answer those questions.
How long did it take you to I guess, rebase yourself and say, well, set yourself a new goal, and or did?
So it was just an ongoing process, really? I think. I really couldn't put a time on it. No. After some time, I said, stop focusing on what you've lost. Focus on what you've gained. What have you gained? You've gained freedom now. All the things that you couldn't do before. You couldn't stay up at night. You couldn't do this. You couldn't travel. You couldn't go on holiday. All these things, the world's, you can do what you want now. So I started to slowly realize that and discover that.
Did your sort of thought process play a big part in, I guess, you must have mentally struggled for a while, and then did you have to start training your mind like you did your body to sort of focus on what you wanted to gain? Yeah, almost.
And I had was involved in the supplement business, so I had some duties for that, which was still keeping me traveling.
Right.
And I think through this dark period, what saved me is I always went to the gym.
Right.
So I always had that outlet. I was still training, but now it's just really for my health, mental health, more than like a goal. So I was going to the gym, and you got contact with the guys at the gym. I do my workout, so you feel a bit better. Exercise is so important for your mental health. I think if people have depression problems and so on, and they don't exercise, it doesn't matter what you do. As long as you exercise and you get those neurotransmitters up, your dopamine and everything like that, I don't think it matters what you do, whether you're running, lifting weights, or doing yoga or whatever. But I think it's important to do something. And human beings were meant to move. Yeah. Our body's meant to work. It's meant to move. And the more you move away from nature, I think the worse it is for us.
Yeah. Did you get depressed?
Oh, absolutely. Very depressed for, I don't know what period of time. It's like it was very intense, and it slowly eased off as I involved myself in the business and realized that there's other things to do. I can go out and socialize. I can go to nightclubs and all this stuff I couldn't do before. So I kind of like got a bit into that, party scene and going out, and it was a distraction, I suppose. And I had fun until it wasn't fun anymore, and I was doing something else.
Yeah.
But throughout everything, I never stopped training, and I think that's really what saved me from being worse.
Yeah. And it sounds like you decided to focus on, although you could have focused on what you'd lost, which is probably an amazing career, you were focusing on what you could do.
And who is Dorian?
Right.
Outside of this goal and outside of being Mr. Olympia, because it becomes like you're a representative for the sport. It becomes entwined in your identity.
Yeah.
But you can't play that role forever. So what role do you play now? And that took me time to find that out.
Yeah, because I guess it's, again, I can only compare it to business, but I guess the business or the career becomes who you are, and you lose.
Especially to the extreme that I did it.
Yeah.
I didn't have time or focus for really anything else. I had some interest, and one of the first things I did when I realized you got time now, you know, you got time, got a bit of money behind you now from your career and everything, so you can do what you want. And I went down to South Africa and went on safari for a couple of weeks because I always had a passion for animals and wildlife, and so that was one of the first things I did, which I wouldn't allow myself to do before because it was too much time out of my schedule, and there's no gyms in the, you know, the savannah in Africa. So slowly got in, you know, to enjoy my flexibility and freedom.
Yeah.
Well, that takes time as well to be flexible, like because you're so regimented for so many years. I used to do this mental exercise, which used to drive me crazy because it was automatic and I wanted to stop doing it. I'd go into a restaurant and whatever meal was in front of me, I would be doing mental calculations. There's a steak there, 200 grams of steak, that's that much protein and that, and there's so many calories there. And shut up, man, you don't need to do that anymore.
Did you have to replace some of those habits and rituals with other ones? Because you sound like you're a fairly sort of habitual ritual. You know, you've got
I suppose I have over the times. Now I have some routine in the morning where I do breathing exercises and meditation, and of course I do my physical exercise. I do yoga a couple of times a week. I do some functional training once or twice a week, and I do cycling outdoors here up the mountains. So at least 5 days a week I'm doing something physical. So that's kind of my routine, and I have my routine time to do emails and phone calls and stuff like that. But I also now have flexibility in there, like, you know, I've got free time. Sometimes I don't do things at certain times. So I'm more flexible, but I learned the value of having structure and having routine, whatever it's for. So I still keep it to a degree.
Yeah. And I've read that your belief now is that, you know, kind of things where you're meant to go, you know, you attract these things into your life.
Absolutely, it's all about energy, and that's what I was doing, not as consciously as I understand it now, but that's what I was doing for Mr. Olympia, I mean, or for bodybuilding. It was all I was thinking about. It was the most important thing I was thinking about and focusing on, and literally, to the point of obsession, I suppose. But a few people that I admire, they were obsessed with what they were doing. Like, since I was a kid, I've been a huge fan of Bruce Lee, and he was super focused. I remember this story that I heard. Dan, I don't know if I pronounce his name properly, Dan Inosanto, he used to be his trainer or train with Bruce Lee. Anyway, they got this wooden man, you know, with the little arms coming out and everything. So Bruce is practicing a move on there, bum, 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 for, you know, whatever, an hour or something. And Dan said to him, that's perfect. You're not going to get any better than that. And he's like, no, it's not perfect yet. So he carried on doing it. He said, so I went out, you know, do some chores and stuff, come back a couple of hours later, guy's still there. The floor is soaking with sweat. And eventually he stops. He said, now it's perfect. And another story I like is about Jimi Hendrix. He's not a sports person, but it was outstanding at what he did. Probably the best guitar player of all time. He used to take his guitar in the toilet when he was taking a crap. And he had a guitar with it like it's part of his body. Like, so I enjoyed those stories about people that were obsessively focused, but you've got to be in order to do something really unusual.
Yeah.
That takes unusual focus.
Yeah. How do you, now with your decisions about where you go, and you know, I can't remember where I heard or what read it, but it was about, you had an idea about wanting to go in a certain direction, but I think it was to do with your yoga teacher or something, and it kind of, you know, the right situations.
Yeah, what happened is I decided that it would be good to do yoga. And instead of going into, you know, a studio or something like this, I'm just going to focus on that I want to do yoga, and I'm looking for a good teacher. And just put that out there. And I spoke to a few people, and I just spoke to a friend of mine. He's, oh yeah, and then I know this girl, she does yoga, and that we did one together, and it was great. And that's how that came about. And getting all the little kinks and tight areas out, and lack of mobility and flexibility that you get from doing years of weight training. Although I did do some stretching for legs and so on, so probably I started with a better base, but My mobility was pretty bad, like as far as being able to rotate and things like that, because you never do that at all. And my balance was terrible. I couldn't stand on one foot without falling over all the time. And because I had also taken in that kind of mentality from the gym, I remember trying to do the tree pose where you're standing on one foot and doing things, and I kept like falling over, and I was like, fuck! And the yoga teacher's like, Dorian, fuck is not a yoga word. Stop trying so hard. Just relax and breathe and do it. Don't try to get to the end, because that's, you know, what I'm used to doing. So in yoga, it's, if you try too hard, you just make it harder. So you got to learn to relax. And I learned that's kind of like life.
Really?
When the stressful periods come along, we start to tense up and get
It
doesn't really help, no. You know. So try to, like, that stormy period comes, try to like relax a little bit through it. So I think I took a bit of that. I'm not saying I'm 100% an expert on that yet. Still get stressed out, but I handle it a lot better than I used to.
I guess it's like using that energy like you did in your training. You know, you had that aggression from your childhood.
Yeah.
You channeled that and almost used it. I don't know what that
Alchemy, turning one thing into something else.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done that a few times.
Yeah. I guess I learned early on to do that, and early on
fighting it.
Yeah, and early on I learned to kind of have to look after myself. So I had that independence there.
Yeah.
And so my training is totally different now, but my lifestyle and my goals and needs are different also. So I've learned to be more flexible, and I think most of the people I know in the bodybuilding game, they just continue to do that training because it's what you know, it's what you're familiar with, and maybe at some point they need to consider some other things as well.
Yeah.
As you get older, having huge muscle mass is not the main thing you need. More mobility and flexibility, and making sure you don't have joint pains. I've got pretty badly damaged AC joint. I had torn bicep, torn tricep, very little cartilage in the left knee from all the leg training I did. Some wear and tear on my hip. But I have absolutely no discomfort, no pain, no anything. And my mobility and everything is greatly improved. I've been doing yoga for about 2.5, 3 years. So I just feel great. I feel my body feels, like I can do pretty much anything apart from lifting heavy weights, because my shoulder joint's damaged, so I don't do that.
Yeah. It sounds like you've always been a bit of an innovator, like even back in the bodybuilding days, your style, your look, your approach on camera, and even now, and I suppose if you're pulling back again the parallels in business, you know, you can't stand still, and you've always seemed to have done things against the grain.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Dorian does the things his way, and I always ask why. That's a big thing with me. Why? Squats are the best things for legs. Everyone says, why? Let me try to do something else. I did believe that until squats. I damaged my hip, so I had to try and do something else, and I discovered you can do it another way. You don't need to do squats. And everybody was training 6 days a week and 20 sets and all this stuff from the Arnold area. And it didn't make sense to me. I read Arthur Jones's writings, who's the guy that built the Nautilus machines, and looked into the real science of muscle building and so on. And Mike Menser, of course, that carried on that high intensity training. So it made logical sense to me. And then when I applied it in the gym, and keeping notes and so on, I got very good feedback from day one. I noticed that if I trained more often, or if I increased the volume in the gym and the time in the gym, I stopped progressing. I stopped. Okay, so let me take a couple of days rest and go back to a more abbreviated routine. Only training 3 days a week, no more than an hour. Boom, start growing again. So there's the feedback.
3 days a week.
3 days a week I was training initially when I first started training, because I was working a job as well. Right. And I couldn't recover training more often than that. That's what the feedback showed me. So I listened to it. Later on, training for Mr. Olympia, I was training 4 days a week. And maximum 1 hour in the gym.
Wow.
But people struggle with that because they don't understand the key. The key to stimulating muscle growth is the intensity of the exercise and the fact that you're progressively overloading and you're giving your body something that it's not used to and it needs to react. Right. Muscle growth is just a reaction to a stress that the body's trying to protect itself from. So you're giving it stress. You're making it lift these weights and work to out of its normal capacity. So now it's going to try to build itself a little bigger and a little stronger to cope with that stress in the future. So that's very basically the process.
That's 3 to 4 days a week, and that's quite incredible. You know, looking at some of the training programs that you get now, and I guess you've built the biggest, I suppose, you know.
Proof's in the pudding, as they say.
That's right, 4 days a week. So there's a good lesson there.
Because I was going into the gym and absolutely hammering with intensity, right. Not with volume, with intensity, okay. To absolute failure, positive failure, negative failure, static failure, absolute failure, destroying the muscle. Then you need to go and rest.
Right.
Yeah, this is the process. Stimulate, overload, recovery. After recovery, overcompensation, growth. Okay? So if that recovery period is not sufficient, you're not going to grow. If that stimulus period is not sufficient, you're not going to grow. So there needs to be a balance between all that intensity and recovery period. So if you're going in and you're training legs and you're hammering your legs and you're breaking them down and you're damaging them and they're sore, right? And then 4 days later, you go and train them again and they're still sore and still damaged, how are you going to get anywhere? You're not really getting anywhere. Or you're getting, you know, your body, as I said, year and a half, whatever you do is going to work. And after that, then you need to get smart about what you're doing.
And would that apply to, say, you know, someone like a female that just wants to get, you know, a nice bikini body, or a guy who just, you know, wants to, sharpen up a bit? Would those same principles apply to anyone?
If you want to build muscle, this is the best way to do it.
Right.
If that's your goal. So if you're a lady that wants to build muscle, which will help you lose body fat, by the way, ladies, yeah, because when you build muscle, it's like putting a bigger engine in your car. Just sitting there, ticking over, it requires more fuel. So instead of starving yourself to try to lose fat, what's going to happen when you starve yourself? You generally lose muscle as well. So now your metabolism is getting slower.
Right.
So that's why you just get into this whole cycle of losing weight, putting weight back on, destroying your metabolism. If you're a lady and you want to lose fat, build the muscle. Use weight training to build the muscle, and then you will be burning the fat because you require more calories. You put a bigger engine in your car. So whether you're a woman, a man, doesn't matter. The same principles apply. What will be a variable factor in there is your recovery ability. So somebody may be able to train legs and be fully recovered and able to go in there after 6 days or 7 days. That's about average, I would say, if you train really hard. But somebody else might have a poor recovery system, genetically. So they need to rest a bit longer. Somebody else might be a super recoverer, and he might be able to train more frequently. So there's a variable factor in there that you have to take into account. A person's metabolism, their lifestyle, are they taking performance-enhancing steroids and things like that, which enhance your recovery? All these factors need to be addressed. But in any case, that's the structure. Stimulus, recovery, growth. So it needs to be sufficient stimulus. There needs to be sufficient recovery period and materials to build with, i.e. your diet, and then your body can get bigger and stronger. So that's a basic format.
Yeah, but for the average person who just wants to, get in shape, what most people would call shape, then you're probably doing more is probably not going to help you at all.
Less is better, apart from effort and intensity.
The effort.
So average person, split your body into 3 workouts, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, but non-consecutive days. Train your whole body over 1 week, and that's a good starting point.
Right.
Maybe you can do more, maybe you can do less, and you need feedback to see that. So if you've got a trainer, that's what you should be doing, or if you're doing it yourself, make notes, See, you know, are you progressing, or once you get to be very advanced, yeah, you've almost reached your potential. So these gains are going to be very, very small. But I'm talking about somebody that's not at that stage, first year or second year of training. Yeah? If you've trained for a month and you've seen zero progress on your weights, on your reps, on everything, what's going to happen next month? Exactly the same, right? So if you haven't progressed for a month, something needs to change. Don't keep doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, right? If you didn't progress in a month, do exactly the same the next month, you'll get exactly the same results, zero. So you need to reassess things if you're not progressing. Right. Something needs to change. Maybe it's your diet, maybe you need more rest. Whatever that factor is, you need to look at it and try and find out what it is.
And with your cardio, would you get that in the way that you're training? Because I've seen some of your workouts, and you don't seem to have any oxygen left to do anything. Is that?
Well, leg workout is definitely cardio taxing.
Yeah.
But I'd probably do a couple of separate cardio workouts as well. And what I'm been doing now, what I believe is the best way to do cardio, because long drawn out cardio has negatives to it.
Really?
Yeah. If you're running, you're wearing your joints. Also, you're producing free radicals when you exercise. So if you can get the benefits of increased cardiovascular efficiency without producing too much and without wearing yourself out too much, that would be the best way to do it. And what I've been doing is intervals, different time periods. But one example is like 1 minute, moderate cardio. So you could use a rowing machine, you could use a cross trainer. My favorite is the air bike, the spin,
yeah.
because this, you're pushing, pulling, and you're using your legs at the same time. So every muscle is working on there. I like it, but I fucking hate it. It's just so taxing, yeah? So I do a minute, normal, moderate pace, and then 20 seconds, absolutely, like your life depends on it. Absolute, all out, 20 seconds. And then you drop that down to a minute, normal again. Do that about 5 times. What's that? 5 minutes and so like 6.5, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Amazing cardio workout. That's all you need to do, a couple of times a week. Trust me, you'll hear it from the scientists in a few years' time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you were like, I know they talk about HIIT now.
I was doing HIIT weight training, yeah. But now you've got HIIT interval cardio, and I think that's more efficient than the long cardio as well. Unless you're practicing a skill or something like swimming, kickboxing or something where you need to do repetitive movements to get that pathway in your brain, right. Then that's more skill, that's more practice. But I'm talking about just the efficiency. I think you can get it in very short bursts.
Yeah.
And who wants to be all day in the gym,
Yeah.
Let's get in, let's get it done and get out.
Well, I think for someone to be to your level, saying that, if you want to get in shape 3 to 4 times a week is enough, apart from the intensity.
Look, the main thing that I hear from people is I don't have time.
Yeah.
And I say to them, if I had you for 45 minutes twice a week, I will transform you. That's all I need. As long as you do the homework, eating properly and resting and all this stuff, I'd do probably 10 minutes interval cardio like that and 30 minutes fast-paced to failure weight training. And that would probably work much better than going in 4 or 5 times a week and piddling about.
Yeah.
And being in the gym I went to the gym training for 2 hours. No, you wasn't training for 2 hours, because if you train with me, training, you will be begging to get out of there after 30 minutes. Yeah. And I won't allow you to have your fucking phone with you either.
No, that's very interesting. And there's some, I guess there's a lot of sort of, fitness trends that come out all the time. But I think that I've trained for years, 30 years, and I probably do too much, to be honest.
Hey, if you get one of those kettlebells and in the past I was doing kettlebell swings for 10 minutes. As many reps as I could do for 10 minutes. So I would do maybe 15, switch to this one, 15, maybe another 15, and put it down and breathe. And my goal was to do 300 reps over time. So it never took me more than like 10 minutes, 10 and a half minutes. And that was an amazing workout. And I've had bodybuilders tried to do that with me, and they couldn't complete it. They couldn't finish 10 minutes. After 5 minutes, they were on the floor. They couldn't breathe.
Wow.
So you don't need a lot of time. If you did that kettlebell workout twice a week,
Yeah.
if that's all you had time for, 20 minutes a week, you'd have amazing fitness and also some muscular development on the quads and the glutes and lower back and everything, because you're throwing the weight up.
So when you're now like, you know, late 40s, 50-year-olds, are you the same principles apply again? You know, just someone like yourself outside of your yoga, would it?
If you're asking me a bodybuilding, muscle building specific training, then yes.
Yeah.
But you may have to adapt it because you may have some physical injuries or limitations as you're getting older. So you have to adapt certain exercises you may not be able to do. But the principles still apply.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of questions and I'm done. But just before that, I know you've got a couple of different businesses. I wonder whether you'd just be able to share a little bit about what they are.
Okay, so my main business is DY Nutrition, which I've just relaunched with a shadow line. That's the bodybuilding line, super high quality bodybuilding or sports line if you like. And we're also working now in the background on a health and wellness line, because kind of that's what I'm interested in now, and that's what I study more rather than the bodybuilding. That's my past, and I already know that quite well. So there's almost two Dorians. There's the bodybuilder, and there's the Dorian now that's into health and wellness, and is very knowledgeable on that, and I'm doing it.
Right.
I'm doing it, right? So, and I've got my old regime with herbs and antioxidants and vitamins and things like that I do. So I decided that it would be good to kind of develop that and offer that to people that need that, they're into that, maybe guys that are over 40 and guys or women, it doesn't matter. So we've got the shadow line, which is the bodybuilding line, if you like, and we're developing something at the moment, we're calling it balance line. You know, I'm all about balance now really in my life, so we're going to call that the balance line. So that's DY Nutrition. It's keeping me pretty busy at the moment because I'm traveling a lot for promotions.
And just on that product, like there's a ton of different supplements on the markets, and you read a lot about the quality of them, and in some of them, you know, they're not great. What's different about yours in terms of the quality of the ingredients and your involvement in that?
Well, first of all, I got my name on it, yeah?
Right.
So I can't hide. And I got pride in my name, so I wouldn't want to accept anything less than the highest quality ingredients in there. Where there's other companies out there, let's call it ABC brand, they're there just to make a quick buck. They're there to make as much profit as possible. I'm in business, so I have to make profit, of course, but I want to offer the best quality product to the customers, and I'm accountable. I'm Dorian Yates, I can't disappear. Whereas other people that run supplement companies, they can shortchange their customers and make a quick buck and they disappear, and they're not accountable. So that happens quite a lot in this industry.
Right. And where do you make it?
It's made in Europe, various locations in Europe at the moment, and we're looking possibly to manufacture in the States because we've got such a huge demand coming from there now, so we'll probably go there eventually. Maybe later 2019 or next year to manufacture there for that market.
And where, if people are interested in that, where do they go to get in touch about
DYNutrition.com, you can find that. So that's my main business, and of course I do limited amount of personal training clients.
Right.
I do that, and I've got a certification course as well, DYHIT, which is for personal trainers. So the idea is that you come, you spend a week with me, and you learn hands-on, in person, all my principles, practical in the gym. You also have a study guide, which is all the theory, and we have an exam at the end. So a personal trainer can be certified in my training methods. And it's interesting because we did some in the States, we did some here, and a lot of the guys, they're good, good personal trainers, and I've been training my clients on your method, and I've read all your books, I've seen the videotape, I read everything, and I thought I knew, but I didn't quite know everything until I did it with you. So the idea is that they can firsthand learn off me, and then they can go and train other personal trainers, pass it down to personal trainers and obviously to their clients as well. and make sure that it's being taught correctly, because there's a lot of misconceptions and mistakes that people make. The training form is very precise. Although people may have seen me lifting some heavy weights, like, yeah, I was very strong and I did lift some heavy weights, but I could have lifted heavier weights if that was my goal.
Yeah, I heard about that. You didn't, although you're known for being crazy on weights, you didn't lift super heavy weights. Is that true?
Well, what's a super heavy weight? It's relative,
compared to
right?
what that's what I mean. Compared to your potential, you lifted a lot, but it was more about how you did it.
Exactly, it's more about using that weight as a tool,
right,
in order to put maximum stress on the muscles that I'm trying to stimulate. Whereas, for instance, a powerlifter, his job is different.
Yeah.
His job is to get this weight from A to B by any means possible. That's his job. But as a bodybuilder, that would be a mistake, because you're trying to bring momentum into the movement. You're trying to bring as many muscle groups as you can into the movement. You're trying to shorten the movement.
Right.
So bodybuilding is almost opposite to the way a weightlifter or a powerlifter would lift the weight. I have my clients really slowing down the negative portion of the rep, being conscious and slowing down the negative portion of the rep. Most people zip through that. For instance, if they do a bench press, right, I've got one, down, got two, and the negative phase of the rep is at least as important as the positive, and I argue possibly more, as I think more muscle damage occurs on the negative, and it's the damage repair that causes the growth. So we can debate that, but anyway, it's at least as important as the positive. And so most people, they're missing half the rep, right, all the time, because they're kind of not concentrating on the negative as much as they should do.
Would you say they're putting probably more weight on than what they need, which potentially could create injury as well?
Most people that come to train with me, their weights go down.
Really?
Yeah, because I have them doing things correctly. So they'll be using less weight, but the muscles will be receiving more stimulus, and they call me the next day and they're like, my back, mate, I can't move it. Yet you were using 30, 40% less weights than you normally do, because normally you're throwing it around. You're using momentum, you're pulling, you're moving, you're missing half the movement, you're zipping through the negative, you're not holding the contraction, you're not squeezing. So it's all in the details.
Right.
And that's why I don't need to do a lot of volume and a lot of sets, because each one is milked to the maximum, every aspect of it.
Yeah. And that's what you'll get on your HIT certification course.
We're currently in the process of planning some dates for later in the year. It's been, as I say, very busy with the nutrition company, but I think we'll try and get a couple of camps in later in the year here in Spain. So people come to Spain, they stay here in the beautiful weather.
Yeah.
We train together, they learn from me. We get to hang out a little bit, have lunch and dinner and so on. So it's a nice experience, and usually there's like 6 people in the group, so they get to bond and
so
become
just a
friends.
small group.
Yeah, because I do everything personally myself.
Right.
So I train a maximum of 3 people in one session earlier in the day, and then 3 people later in the day. So 6 people in a week. So you've got my personal attention all the time.
How do they get, if they're interested in sort of applying for that? How would they?
DYHRT.com.
Right.
You can go online and have a look there, and we'll announce some dates soon.
Right.
So those are the main things that I'm doing now, business-wise.
Right. I'll put those in the we'll put those in the show notes so people can get in touch with you on that one. So yeah, just two questions, and one I'm just going to sort of go back because I know it's a big part of what you do, but the subject of concentrating and focusing on what you want in life. If someone's probably not done a good job and maybe they want to start competing in fitness or doing something for the business, what have you learned over the years about the power of the mind, and how, almost like if you looked at your week, any goal, what are some of the simple things you should do? How much time in a day should you be focusing on your goals? Any lessons that we could sort of share with people that you've
I think it's important to maybe focus once a day on your goals, and it doesn't need to be you don't need to be there all day about it, but you're just reminding yourself every day what's important to you, where you want to be, and honest with yourself and what that requires. You can just aimlessly dream, but I want this big boat, or I want this, I want that. I'm just talking about material things, could be anything. Well, I go back to great, but how are you going to achieve it? So you need a plan, and you need to, I think, daily reinforce how important that is to you, and you know what you've got to do, and are you willing to do that?
Yeah.
That's being honest with yourself. It's not the easiest thing to do, but you've got to try and do that. And yeah, just reinforcing it daily is a good practice.
Yeah.
Probably in the morning when you get up, it's good before all the day hits you. It's a good time to focus on things. If you're going to meditate as well, it's a good time, because it's kind of setting yourself up for the day, your energy level. So if you go out the door in a more positive mood, the world will treat you back in a more positive mood.
Yeah.
You'll find. People will react to you differently. If you're feeling good, your energy up, you're feeling happy, people will pick up on that. And the opposite's true. People might just avoid that guy. You know? So it's a lot to do with your energy, which, if you're conscious, you can be in control of that somewhat.
And when you did it, when you was in that position, did you ever? Because I guess one of the things that when you're thinking and imagining it, there's believing that you'll get it, and almost like just being relaxed in some way that I've meditated, I've thought about it, I'm going to get it.
Yeah, you've done it, mate. You've done
fearful that like someone's going to take it away, and still being in that anger. Do you get that feeling in your body where like I'm already
relaxed,
there? Right.
Relaxed, confident that you're going to do it. If you're going to go out with fear of something, you're almost like attracting that something towards you, because it's what you're focusing on.
Right.
If you're focusing, I'm going to be broke, I'm going to be broke. Well, if you're going to stay broke, right? Okay, I'm having a hard time now, but this, and I will get out of this, and let's focus on that. Let's feel confident, and that's going to have a much better likelihood of happening.
So you almost got to put out that any doubt, haven't you? I suppose, in like picturing it and then
and being aware that you do have that doubt, because often we're not really aware of our thoughts.
Really.
And I think that's where meditation has helped me. It kind of slows down your thought process. So you can almost like see these negative thoughts coming in, you're like, whoa, 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 no you don't, yeah? Stopping you there. Whereas before they might have got in there a little bit more. Yeah. So I think with meditation it almost kind of slows down the way you're thinking and calms down your thoughts so that you can recognize them a little bit more.
And push them out of the way.
Yeah, and stop them at the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we used to do on the door, stop them there before they get in and cause trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. I'll use that one. So final question, Dorian. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you or other people have believed is impossible and made it possible. We've obviously talked about a load of those things, but what's something recently where you've escaped your own personal limits, would you say?
Well, I'd like to say it's almost like I had a whole lifestyle change that happened that could have been difficult. It wasn't really, but it could have been difficult in that I stepped away from what was familiar, the bodybuilding training that I was, and diet and everything and lifestyle that I was trying to continue, because that's what I was familiar with and I like to train, but the training started like, my injuries would start slowly getting a little bit worse, and I thought, how's this going to go if I keep doing this? You know, maybe when I'm like 60, I'm not going to be able to lift up my arm or something. So it was that, and I feel a little tight around the hips and everything. So that's when the whole yoga idea came to me. And following on from that, I think, the yoga and meditation, then I started reassessing my diet. Like, why am I following a high protein bodybuilding diet now? And like all the research and reading I'm doing is pointing that's probably not the best thing to do,
really,
especially as you're getting older. I mean, it's a stress to taking a ton of protein through your system. So I changed the diet as well, and this consequently, I lost muscle mass because now it's not required. I'm doing yoga, I'm riding my bike. Body doesn't need this muscle mass, so I'm coming down in muscle mass, which I think a lot of bodybuilders are uncomfortable with. Especially if you're Mr. Olympia, right? you know, you're epitomizing bodybuilding. You're 6 times Mr. Olympia. Surely you're supposed to look like this big all your life. But I thought,
and other people would expect that.
And a lot of people would expect that, and I could easily feel very pressured into keep doing that, because will people still like me?
Yeah.
Will people still accept me? Will people still want to buy my products? Will still, there's all that I think goes through people's mind. but I did it. I stepped out of my comfort zone, and I've talked to people about it, and I've shared it. And actually, it was my wife. I was doing yoga, and my instructor took a picture of me doing the splits. I was able to do the splits, right? So it looked pretty impressive. But I thought, nobody's going to be interested in that. You know, I'll just keep it to myself. People just want to see me, old videos of me lifting weights and everything. And then I got a message from a friend of mine. Bloody hell, mate, I didn't know you could do the splits. I was like, I can, but how the fuck do you know? He's like, oh, it's on Instagram. So I had a bit of a word with my wife. I was like, why did you put that on Instagram? I don't want that on there. And she's like, relax, look at your comments. And I've looked, and people are loving it. So I think not that it should be super important to me, but people did accept it. They were interested, and a lot of people got in touch with me, guys in their 40s and 50s that have been doing weights for years, and they got pains and they got this, and they've started doing yoga and they've started meditating, and they're grateful that I put it out there that I was doing it. So, I mean,
made it seem as though it was kind of masculine. Men can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we got bodybuilders going to yoga now. Yeah, when I go to a class on the weekends, and when I went, it was just me and a load of girls. Now there's a few guys coming from the gym because they see that I'm doing it, and so they get curious, and somehow maybe it's more acceptable now because I did it already. And I think it's very beneficial for people, especially as you're getting older.
Yeah.
I'm sure the young Dorian wouldn't have listened because he's like, how's that going to give me bigger legs or something? I don't need it. But for general health, all these practices are great, and I think that's what you need to be more concerned with when you're getting older, rather than projecting some image to the outside world that is not beneficial to yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ego kind of gets caught up in, there's being fit and healthy, but then there's also what it looks like, and I think you can carry some of that with you and do things you probably shouldn't do, like kids and steroids. Young kids taking those, thinking they're going to get a body when, even as you said, if genetically you've not got some of those things, you're never going to look like, no matter how much
you need to do some period, even if you're going to compete, you need to do some period of training without steroids first, just to get to know your body and get to know how to do things properly.
Yeah. Well, Dorian, it's been wonderful. I appreciate
Thanks for having me on, man.
It's been a great conversation.
Good questions, thanks.
I could have talked for hours, but I know you've got other things to do, so thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, mate. Cheers.